Take the exit. Turn right into the drive-thru.
Nope, I'm making dinner tonight.
You don't have time. Josh has practice.
Oh, that's right. I'll just get a salad.
And fries?
No, just the salad.
But salad cancels fries.
Salad only.
Fries.
Salad.
Fries.
Food noise isn't fair, but Mochi Health is. The affordable GLP-1 source that puts you on the road to successful weight loss.
Hey, can I get the
fries?
Salad. Sorry.
Learn more at joinmochi.com. Mochi members have access to licensed physicians and nutritionists. Results may vary.
At DSW, we ask the important questions, like, what shoes are you going to wear? Whether you're prepping for wedding season, festival season, or just planning the ultimate vacay, the right shoes can make or break an RSVP. So own the moment. You've got big plans, and we've got just the shoes. At the perfect price, of course. Get ready to get ready with Designer Shoe Warehouse. Head to your DSW store or dsw.com today and let us surprise you.
All right. So, all right, guys, we're back. It's been a little while, but we've been busy and we continue to be busy. Just general announcement, the Discovery made their official announcement that they're doing our series, which we've been shooting and editing for the past 6 to 7 months. And hopefully, if all goes well, it'll come out mid-summer time. They initially were going to talk about maybe end of May, but they had to shift focus and stuff. So people have been asking us online, and they've been asking us questions about the podcast and stuff. And they've been watching other documentaries. I mean, I got a response from someone today that said, watch the one, I think it was the History Channel one. And they were asking questions about, and I'm like, part of me wants to just answer them. And then I go, you're going to have to wait. We're addressing a lot of these things in the series when it comes out. So please be patient. We started this. We're going to talk about a bunch of other things that may or may not be in the series. And because there's the thing is this story and the amount, we were just talking about it off air, the amount of documents associated with John and Clarence and Alcatraz is a bottomless pit. Yes. And it literally is. I mean, Mike just the other day just sent me stuff, and I was reading it this morning, and it's just it's like you can really chronicle after they get arrested, every pretty much piece, every movement they had, everything they did, and they kept really good records in prison. Mm-hmm. And it was hard to keep records back then because you had to use a typewriter. I'm looking at all this stuff in these forums and stuff like that.
It's
anybody who's old enough who had to deal with a typewriter, it's not easy.
No, it's not.
It's not, because you make one mistake, you got you don't have that autocorrect. You have to physically do the correcto type, and I don't see any kind of errors in this. So these people were very proficient at typing. So it's very interesting. But the thing that you sent me this morning, though, which was really interesting, is because it was something that we had that we were dealing with when we were going to shoot there, and was when Pam Bondi and the DOJ showed up at Alcatraz Island, and there was that news article where they're saying Trump wants to reopen Alcatraz, and everybody when we were up there were like, it's not going to happen. This place is falling apart. I mean, it's just we can barely keep it together just to have tourists walking around. Well, there's another article, Ken, you sent me this morning. What did that article say, Ken?
Well, it said that Trump petitioned for, I believe it was $152 million. He wants Alcatraz reopened and built to standards that it could be turned into a federal prison. He is, you thought the first time he would have been joking, but now he's asking for money for it. So I don't know. I mean, could he do it? I mean, there's lots of me that says no, but then, I never say no.
Yeah.
Not with him.
You never know. But I mean, they would lose so much money. I mean, Alcatraz generates a lot of tourist money for that area. I mean, it's a lot, not just going to Alcatraz, but then all the hotels and all the, there's so many people that go there to visit Alcatraz every year. I can't imagine that would just go away.
Yeah. Yeah. I think I think it's just a distraction. It's another one of his distractions he does. You know, he just throws red meat out there and lets the press kind of, you know, throw it around. But everybody we've talked to in the park system, even when we're there, because we've been there like 3 times now in the last 6 months, or actually even more. In the last year, we've been there like 4 times, 4 or 5 times. So, and everybody we've talked to just said, no, there's no way. I mean, and then we've been in the catacombs. We've been in the place is like, it's old. It's falling apart.
It will never happen. What I do love about it, though, is it keeps Alcatraz in the news.
Yeah.
Which is, one, great for us because everyone's now talking about Alcatraz. So, yeah. In the news, Mr. Trump.
What about you, Mike? You're ground zero up there. You're not too far from Alcatraz. What are the locals saying about this?
Well, I didn't hear about the story until Ken commented on it. So that was new for me. I thought it was, from months ago of when they, Pant Bondi and others were on the island visiting. And I just thought for the dignitaries that showed up, it was a nice hotel and a show in San Francisco and kind of do this photo op on the island. And I thought it was over, it was done. And then now all of a sudden it's coming up again. So I'm surprised. I'm really surprised that he's revisiting the notion of reopening the prison, although 152 million is just, that's not going to get you close to what you're going to need billions.
You have to level it. You can't use the existing structure at all.
No, there's already holes in the wall.
Exactly.
Right. And it's not like he can build it next to the existing facility because there's just a little bit of, it's where they used to have the apartments for the families on the island. Yeah. And that's a very small area compared to the prison. And it's also a bird sanctuary. It's protected.
That's true. That's true.
Government. So there's so many hurdles to get over. And it was closed to begin with because of the cost just to run the prison at the time. It was 3 times the cost than other federal prisons.
I mean, the last 3 times we were there, I mean, it's like they have areas just cordoned off and tarped off because they're just retrofitting it just to keep it so it's safe for people to walk around and do a tour. I can't imagine. They would literally have to level that thing, flatten it out, take all that debris off. Once again, you mentioned that it's a bird sanctuary. How do you can't reclassify it?
No.
We have there's a tiny little fish that no one really, and it's a dry riverbed next to our house, and they can't do anything. Fish aren't even there, but because it's classified as, the Fish and Game classified, this one fish is like endangered, which I've never seen, because the riverbed's been dry. It only fills up during the rain. So, and they can't do anything. They can't even cut the brush, and it's like a fire hazard. They won't even let them do that.
And when we were there to film, we were supposed to do part of it in the dining hall, but that was closed off because they had asbestos in the dining hall, and it was kind of a toxic site, cleaning all that out, and they had completely boarded up. You couldn't even look in. So, and that's just one part of the island. I'm sure there's those kinds of things all over that there's just no way they're going to be able to.
Yeah. Every time we left after filming, I got a cough that lasted like 3 weeks.
Yeah.
It was cool to film there, though. We were there when nobody was there. It was dark. It was the middle of the night. Went out on a boat and filmed there when it was empty. It was great.
But the asbestos is everywhere. They said that one of the reasons we couldn't film inside the cells is because of the asbestos. But I didn't see anybody cleaning them up after they opened them up. There's no cleaning crew or anything. And we were in the utility corridor, which was very cool. And
we filmed in the cells. What are you talking about?
No, I'm just saying before they left. They said one of the reasons they keep the cells closed is because there's like asbestos, and that's why the utility corridor, you can't access that. The public can't do that because of the asbestos and stuff like that. And that's it. And then that other side, which was built, it was from the Civil War with the flat bars. They said it's even worse over there.
Oh wow!
So
yeah, it's not going to happen. It's like you said, it's a distraction. But it's a good distraction for me.
Yeah. No, I mean, it's like, I'd like to see a rendering of what a new Alcatraz federal prison would look like. I mean, because the federal prisons are pretty, number one, the only one that I remember seeing when it first came out, there's a Supermax in Colorado, which is like push button, and it's like pod, like, one guard can kind of survey like 100 inmates or 50 inmates, and like double decker and stuff like that. And there's like no contact. They just push a button, cell door opens, they exit into an exercise yard, which looks like a small handball court, and they get and all they can see is the sky. And then when they're done after an hour, they go back and they look it's like a hamster trail.
Mm-hmm.
So I'd be curious to see what that would look like, unless, because I would think if they're going to put it there, it would be like a maximum security prison. Try to make it the worst of the worst. Because that's what he said in the article too. He wants to make it so it's like the worst of the worst.
Right.
But anyway, back to our story of Alcatraz. There's a lot of Ken and Mike sent me, like I was talking before, the amount of paperwork that we get regarding this case and the files from about John and Clarence and their trajectory towards Alcatraz before they even got there.
Mm-hmm.
Some really interesting stuff. So, Mike, what you can say all this stuff this is all stuff that you got from FOIA request?
No, I went on the website for the National Archives. And if you've ever done that, it's not easy to navigate. It's you have to go through a lot of clicking to get to the right places. So if you just say, in the search box, John Anglin, you're not going to find anything. You have to go to other places and files and access. So anyway, so it took a while for me to find the right place. And once I did, then it was a treasure trove of information. I found approximately 1,500 pages of documents, 500 each for John, Clarence, and Whitey Bulger. Unfortunately, there was nothing for Frank Morris that I've been able to find. I think I found a photograph, and that was it. That was his mugshot.
That's interesting.
Yeah, it's interesting. Of all people, not Frank Morris, but for John and Clarence, fortunately, it's the full file of their records from their incarceration, basically leading up to Alcatraz. It has a little bit of Alcatraz, but most of it is prior to that, and a lot of it centers around their arrest from the bank robbery in 1958. It has some before and some after, but 1,000 pages for the two of them, and there are things I've never seen before. Like letters that
I know,
letters that Helen wrote on his behalf, saying that she wants to marry him, and then there's a letter that John wrote saying he's referring to Helen as his common law wife, which is new. And he also talks about John, the son, Helen's son, that he got really sick and he wasn't sure if he was going to make it. There's another document in 1953 when Clarence escaped from prison and he got shot in the arm.
Yeah.
I never knew he got shot.
Yeah. I saw that too.
Yeah, I didn't even know that.
That's
I'd never heard of that.
He got shot during an escape attempt.
Yes.
Right, when he was in Florida.
Yeah.
So, and it has, and I haven't gone through all of them because there's so many records to go through.
Yeah.
So I sent, Rob and Cindy some of the more interesting ones that I found. And one of them was when they would work in the prisons, both in Leavenworth and in Alcatraz, they had guards who were their supervisors. And from time to time, they'd have to write reports on how they were doing as workers. And one of them was written in April of 1962. And he was saying that John wasn't very ambitious and he wasn't going to amount to anything, kind of a report. He was just kind of lazy and didn't do much. And it was in the middle of the planning and he had no idea what was really going on.
Exactly. And he was wasn't he working the shower? Wasn't he working the showers or something, like a shower guy or something like that? There was something that he worked at.
When he was working in the clothing room.
Yeah, he was working in the clothing room. During the time.
So it's interesting to see in time the people who are working with them and actually how they were reacting to their work and how they did. And other times, like Clarence, evidently Clarence was a really good worker. He was saying he was a role model for the other workers. He was on time. He had a good attitude toward his work, and he really complimented on his work ethic. This was before Alcatraz. This was when he was at Leavenworth. And so we're getting a picture of them at the time of how they were doing, how they were being perceived. And somebody made a comment that, you would never suspect they were up to anything, which is exactly what Whitey Bulger said, that they kept a low profile and that there was nothing about them that was suspicious.
Yeah, no, it says it repeatedly through this. They said they just were kind of model inmates and they didn't really do anything. And the only time they didn't really talk to anybody except themselves in the yard.
Right.
Yeah, they definitely kept their nose clean.
And correct me if I'm wrong. I'm reading this first thing, the classification study, and it says present offenses. There's one thing where it starts talking a little bit about the bank. It talks about the bank robbery where they were caught and who they were caught with. Helen was caught with them, and Alfred's wife, who was underage, was caught, and then she was 16, so she was returned to her family. But there was also, when they were talking about the bank robbery, they were talking about other jobs that they thought they may have done in addition to the bank robbery. Did you see that? Where they found like the acetylene torch on a roof at something. I thought that was interesting that they were trying to pin some other things that they
thought that maybe they had been involved in. Yeah.
Yes, both in Alabama and in Georgia. That they didn't have proof of it, but they said that these things happened around in that same time frame. So I thought that was interesting that they were starting to try to. Tanks were regularly found. Where's this one thing? It said Clarence and Alfred were known to have been in the area, as their prior records will show. Both were fugitives from Florida penal system. Entrance into the bank was attempted from the roof. Acetylene and oxygen tanks and regulators were found. These items were stolen from the Stallings radio shop in Blakely, Georgia. They have been
not too far from where they grew up.
Yeah, they've been under heavy suspicion for automobile theft and also breaking and entering a number of business established in Central and South Alabama. And so, I mean, Ken, does that match up to it? Because I thought the whole reason they wanted to rob the bank is they needed money, and it looked like all this other stuff that they were doing.
Yeah, there were a lot of things that John and Clarence were, into. So probably most of it the family didn't know anything about. The bank robbery was the only really kind of criminal activity that the family knew after they did it. They told them where they were. Well, they didn't tell them about the bank robbery, but they did tell them where they were going. And Helen had said, several times later on, to family members that John, robbed that bank for her, and that they were going to be going to California and starting a new life.
Yeah. And then there's one part here. It says that Alfred tried to bribe an FBI agent. He did.
Whenever they caught them in Helen's father's house, Alfred offered to give him some money if he would let them go. So yes, he did do that.
Yeah. And
the excuse me, the amount of files that we have been going through, it's thousands and thousands of pages. I mean, it's incredible. I mean, Mike, you could just keep going and going. And that's what I was saying before, is that if we were able to have the time to go through all of these documents and just kind of cross-reference them, it's an amazing amount of work that needs to be done to be able to see all the details and all the connections here, because it's incredible. There's so much material here.
Yeah.
Well, once they were in the system, the authorities documented everything that they did. I mean, it has their medical records. If they had to have some kind of go to the dentist, or they were sick, they had a fever, they gave them aspirin, whatever it was, everything was recorded. Everything was documented. So that's why there are so many pages of information.
Yeah. And then
the letters that, like Helen writing John, they undoubtedly scanned those in to keep them, but they didn't scan all the letters in, like the letters that the family wrote them. Were you able to find any of those?
Well, there was one letter. It's 2 pages that Helen wrote on John's behalf in '58, basically asking for leniency and that he was reformed. He wasn't the same guy that he was, and that he should be let out. That she was pleading for mercy on John's behalf.
Mm-hmm.
She referred to herself as, like I said, his wife, and that they wanted to get married. His common law wife. He wanted to get married to him, and she would provide the stability in his life that he needed. And obviously it didn't work. He didn't get released, but I'd never seen that before, that she had personally involved herself to try to get him out of prison, because he was a good man and she wanted to be with him.
Yeah. And then there was the other part where that letter that John was writing, basically telling, so I can't remember who he was telling, but he was telling that someone that he told that Helen, she's got to move on.
Yes, he I believe he wrote my grandmother or his mom, saying that, and I believe it was when he was in either, it might have been Leavenworth, that when he wrote it, that he just felt like, that Helen needed to quit writing him. I'm sure every time she wrote him, he realized how many years he had, and he eventually just said, I'm gonna have to tell her to quit writing me and move on with her life.
Yeah, it's interesting. Yeah, I just saw this thing where he was shot in the arm, 1953. Right, shot in the left upper arm, and Florida State Prison. Yeah, because I was looking at the and it was like a question and answer. It was like a health sheet. It says, "Have you ever been shot? Serious gunshot?" And it says circled yes. What was the other one? Tonsillectomy. He had a tonsillectomy in 1946.
Yeah, it's really detailed.
Well, the one document that I thought was interesting was the one after John and Clarence tried to escape from Leavenworth. It goes into a lot of detail, because the thing that we had prior to this was only the newspaper account of what happened. Of course, they're just going to summarize the information, and so they just kind of hit the high points. But they had an official investigation in the report about the escape, and one of the things it talks about is how it goes into detail about how they had the two bread boxes, because in the bread boxes, because the bread boxes were going to be taken to a van or a truck and then taken to a local prison, and then it was distributed. All the bread was distributed for the presidents, for the inmates' meals. And so it describes how on the top box, because there are two stacked on top of each other, it was the bottom portion of one box was cut out, and then the top portion of the bottom box was cut out. So then Clarence, put it over himself. Well, the thing that got him caught was that there was a little bit of a gap between the two boxes. They weren't flush with each other. There was probably like little feet or something. So there's like an inch gap between the two. When the supervisor came in, as John was wheeling the boxes to the elevator that would take it to the truck, he can see there was somebody inside because there was movement in between the boxes. So he immediately spotted Clarence, not knowing who he was at the time. But the thing that was most interesting, and I'll read from the actual report. First of all, that John emphatically denied that he knew that Clarence was in the boxes. But the thing that was suspicious was that John admits that he was not supposed to be working on that morning. That was not his shift. And so he's pushing the box to the thing, and he claims he denies all culpability of, I didn't even know he was in there. And of course, Clarence backs him up. He says, yeah, I didn't tell John anything. He was just, I asked him to come and help me. And then they did an investigation, and they couldn't find enough evidence against John to indict him or accuse him of aiding in the arrest or in his escape attempt. And so he was never actually charged with anything. What Clarence was, of course, caught. And then he was, as they put it, he was segregated from the rest of the population. And then eventually, they determined that he was too much of a flight risk, and they sent him to Alcatraz. But John, they never caught him. They could never had enough evidence against him to say that he was a part of the escape, even though it was clear that he was.
Yeah.
And so they just sent him just because of suspicion. They didn't actually catch him.
Yeah. I wonder what their plan was there, because only one of them was going to be able to get out unless he was going to jump into the van.
They never went into that kind of detail of how he was going to get out. It was all,
get one out at a time.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I guess, Clarence was going to get out, and at some point in time, John would
find another way.
Yeah, come out another way.
But I just thought it was so funny that John is pushing Clarence to the elevator, and then when he gets caught, he said he didn't know he was in the bread boxes somehow.
Sure. All right.
Like, and they still couldn't get him on it. They didn't have enough to get him. I just thought that was so funny.
It is.
I think these guys are great. I mean, that was the most exciting part about doing this documentary is really getting to know John and Clarence and really getting to know your family, Ken. And it's been such an amazing experience. And there's so many levels to these guys. They were super smart. And it's just so crazy to me that for so many years, we didn't know anything about them. We just knew that they were just like these. It's Frank Morris. I never in any of my knowledge of this case or anything about Alcatraz ever would have thought that John and Clarence were who they are, you know, with the level of intelligence that they had and creativity and just characters that they are, just funny, like this, like he's pushing John out. He's pushing him out the door. He's like, he's not in there. It's just, I think it's amazing how many layers there are to this story.
Yeah. I was talking to someone the other day who grew up in the San Francisco area, like literally right in off of Ashbury, went to high school in that area and stuff. And when I started telling him some of the details, because, you know, he had, you know, it's like, it was the lore when you grow up, he could see it from his high school window. So it overlooked the bay and he could see the island and the prison. And he was like blown away when he started hearing about all this stuff. And he goes, I have no idea. I think that's what's going to be really interesting when the documentary comes out. There, you know, we talked about some of this stuff on the podcast, but there's a lot that we saved for the doc and getting into the nitty gritty details.
And all of that is in your book. I mean, that's really what has been the impetus for all of this is like your research and your, you know, really detailed research into that book to really sketch these characters, these men as the characters that they really were. And it all makes sense to me how they could have easily gotten involved with Mickey Cohen. There's no doubt in my mind. Like before I was like, oh, come on. That's like very, you know, sounds like a movie. Is that real? How could that be real? But after doing all the research and reading all this stuff and just learning about these guys, it really makes sense to me that they could have easily befriended Mickey Cohen. He would have loved them.
And there was a situation where I ran into I can't even remember how I came into contact with this person, but he was an actor in Hollywood.
Oh, because I found the book.
Yes, you found the book.
He wrote a book.
He wrote a book, and he was an actor. He was actually in the Mickey Mouse Club, so he was a teenage actor. He was in there with Annette Funicello, and then this is when he was probably 19 or 20, and he was kind of like in that transition from being a child star, and he started getting, adult parts. And he wrote this whole book, and I read this book like in like a day
about Mickey Cohen
and
his relationship with Mickey Cohen. He was a Hollywood actor who became friends with Mickey Cohen. It was around the same time that John and Clarence went to Alcatraz.
Yeah.
So
in the late 50s.
Rob actually talked to the guy.
He's still alive, and I read his book. But one of the things I would be asking him is I'd ask him, I go, you know, what kind of character he was, because like it's not like he infiltrated. Mickey was like enamored with Hollywood, and you know he loved being around stars. He had this restaurant it was just filled with actors all the time, movie stars, you know, in the mid to late 50s. And Mickey saw him in a movie where he was playing a young tough guy, and so he actually he would go to these premieres. He'd go to the premieres of the movies, and so he went and saw this movie where this guy was in, and he found out where his car was, and he left a note on his car saying, hey, listen, you play really good tough guys. If you ever at this, like in Brentwood, come see me at my ice cream shop, because he owned an ice cream shop in Brentwood.
Mickey Cohen did.
So he actually went there with a date of his, and he had no idea who Mickey Cohen was. And so all of a sudden he said, he shows the person at the counter his note, and he goes, oh, hold on. And all of a sudden Mickey Cohen comes out, and his girlfriend or date at the time knew exactly who he was. And so her eyes just shrunk, and she was like, she wanted to get out of here. And he was like, no. And he hung out with him because he was so nice to him. And then that began this relationship that they had for up until he went to Alcatraz. So it was like, this was a couple of years beforehand. So he became part of his entourage. And so he saw a lot of the stuff that he did. You know, Mickey would keep him like in the dark about some things, but he, unfortunately, because he was hanging out with him a lot, he saw some of the things. And one of the things I asked him, we were talking about the the whole Supreme Court justice and him being, bonded out. And I said, would Mickey have the juice to get something like that done? And he said, absolutely. And he goes, Justice Warren was a California judge. He was from California. And so he goes, he may not have had anything on the justice, but he could have had something on one of his family members or someone close to him. And he could have used that as leverage to, get things that he needed to get. So I thought that was interesting. And this is someone who actually hung out with him for like 3 to 4 years before going to Alcatraz. And the book is pretty fascinating. Just all the stories about how he, navigated that and then got a little bit too close to the fire. Like his father was having problems with a neighbor in his apartment, and he told Mickey about it. And all of a sudden the tenant that was living next door magically got beat up, and there was no problem.
Yeah.
But then he was like, he was very thankful because his father was getting beat up by this young guy who was being a bully. But he's like, now I owe him a favor. I've never asked him, what is he going to ask me to do? So that was always lurking behind him.
When you think about, like, Cindy, you were talking about John and Clarence and how that after you kind of got to know them, you could see how, that they would have been friends with Mickey Cohen. But, they were also friends with James Whitey Bulger. I mean, here's another guy in prison that when they first meet him, they hit it off together. And so, I mean, that's an amazing story in itself too.
Yeah.
So it's not, Mickey Cohen's not the first mobster that they became friends with. And you can kind of almost see the connection between Mickey Cohen and James Bulger. I mean, they were friends too. And now you've got all these, 3 individuals that are planning an escape, and you've got Mickey Cohen, you've got Whitey Bulger, all helping them at the same time. I could definitely see how all of this plays together.
And I'm so excited for everyone to see the documentary because there's so many things that we uncovered that we haven't talked about on this podcast that are really exciting and really tie things together. So we're really excited. Can't wait for everyone to see what has been uncovered and the links that have been made. It's pretty incredible.
Yeah. And it's just physically going to the being at Alcatraz as many times as we have now, and just seeing how close their cells were to each other.
Yeah. It's
like, you couldn't.
We talked about it so much, but when you're actually there and you see how close they are and you're like, why? It's almost such arrogance that they would have put them next to each other like that. Like, why would you do that? They were
warned not to.
Right.
And these people, I guess the warden, he pretty much felt like that, Alcatraz was inescapable.
Yeah. Where are they going to go?
If they got out, where are they going to go?
Where are they going to go?
I mean, you're going to go down to the water and swim because they didn't think that they were capable of creating something, that even had the imagination of creating a boat or a raft that they would use. So, yeah, I mean, it's kind of like being in a prison and you escape and you run to the wall, and the wall is, 14, 15 feet high. Where are you going? You're not going anywhere. So, and the water was actually the wall. So when they got to there, I mean, unless you had a plan, you wouldn't, you could take your chances in the water, but you probably wouldn't have made it.
Yeah. And the thing is, it looks really close, but it's it's very deceptive. I mean, we were back basically, it looks close from the San Francisco, like the wharf where you take the ferry. It looks very close. But and then
people swim it. I mean, we were there and there were people swimming. There was a lot of people swimming. I was really surprised to see how many people were swimming.
Swam it myself. I mean,
a coyote swam from San Francisco to Alcatraz recently.
It's definitely a doable thing. Doing it at night probably would have been a challenge. But, both John and I don't know anything about Frank Morris, but I do know that John and Clarence were very good swimmers.
Yeah.
And if they had just got in the water and said, let's just swim it, they could have done it.
Yeah. The other thing I thought was interesting is that, Angel Island looks a lot closer too, but we went to Angel Island and we were kind of looking back at the island. It looks a lot further when you're on the island, looking back to Alcatraz, which I thought was really interesting. So it's very deceptive. Everything looks very close, but it's like almost this forced perspective.
When you're in the water and it's cold and you're swimming, it's not that close. If you don't have a wetsuit on, it's not that close.
Well, and two, people who get out there and they're swimming it, what we did with the race or what we saw when we were out at Alcatraz, these people, they're doing it for fun. But if you're in the middle of the night, you're an escapee, you're motivated, totally different. And your motivation is what's going to carry you across that
swimming for your life.
Yes. I mean, it's not like this is fun and if I get tired, I can have someone pick me up. This was real. And there's definitely a different mindset when you're doing something and you have to do it because there's nobody else around. It's almost kind of like when I ran across the Grand Canyon. I did a run, and they told us there's no ranger that can come get you if something happens to you. You're on your own. You have to take all your supplies with you, and so you had a different mindset because you get out there in the middle of nowhere and you go, well, I can't stop and call someone because there is no one to call. So
they can't come get you.
You have to really think about how to take care of yourself. So
another thing that struck me about when we were on the island filming was, it's all cement. The floor is cement, the walls are cement, the ceiling is cement, and sound travels in that place. It's an echo chamber, and obviously for filming, that's a problem because you're getting all this ambient noise and it has to be really quiet because you don't want to pick up people in the background talking or walking. Even walking makes noise.
Mm-hmm.
And you imagine them, at lights out at night, trying to dig out the back of their cells. Like you said, there's the back of the cells and there's the utility corridor, and then there's the back of the other cell on the other side of the cell block. So they butt up against each other. The inmates on the other side had to hear them. They had to have heard them
without a doubt.
Chip, and yet they never once did they go to a guard and said, "Hey, these guys are doing something in their cells. You might want to check it out to curry favor with the guards." They all kept the secret for months, as they were all four of them trying to dig out of the back of their cells, and they never did. And like I said, the sound travels in that place, and at night when it's dead quiet, I don't know how the guards didn't hear it.
Yeah, well, we were there in the morning, early morning hours, like 4:00 in the morning when nobody was there. We're there just with a couple, park rangers, and
who were lovely, by the way.
Were great. Everybody at Alcatraz was fantastic, and it was creepy.
It was really creepy.
And it was kind of raining and foggy. So you couldn't even see the island as we approached it until you were literally maybe 500 yards to it. And it was, all the power shut down. There's only a couple lights on near the dock. It was very ominous. So it was definitely, but yeah, I mean, anything, you could hear someone across the entire part of the island.
There's no doubt that when they got onto the roof and that thing slammed shut, that everybody heard it.
Yeah.
Oh, yes.
There's no doubt. They went up on the roof. There's no doubt. Even when they went up on the roof and the thing shut, I mean, you could hear it. There was nobody there and you could hear it. I mean, it was so loud.
If it hadn't been for Whitey Bulger and the other prisoners, making noise when that happened, banging their beds, causing a scene, and I probably distracted the guards, to the point that they just pretty much brushed it off. But the other prisoners definitely helped on that night.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, even Whitey talks about how that he laid in bed for hours thinking about what's happening, and had they got caught, and he said he said he didn't sleep hardly any that night, just thinking about it.
That's the thing. It's like, why was everyone so willing to cooperate and to protect them? I bet it's also because they were likable guys.
Right.
And because Mickey Cohen and Whitey Bulger and Bumpy Johnson were like, just keep your mouth shut. Like, what are you getting involved for?
Yeah, no one's
Well,
getting
and they
involved.
definitely wanted to stick it to the prison. I mean, it was.
Mm-hmm.
This was a these three probably had the best chance of anybody that had tried an escape, and they knew it, and they wanted to see it through. They wanted to see it a successful escape.
Yeah. So, Mike, as far as you sent us just a few of these documents. How many more documents do you think are related to this case? I mean, we have the 1,850 pages from the FBI files, which we have now bound. We have a bound copy of it that we bought, which is like a phone book.
Yep.
And then, how many more documents do you think are still out there?
Well, like I said, for the 3 that I sent you, their files, that's another 1,500 pages. And I'm really surprised that Frank Morris isn't included in any great detail. That really surprises me. They have other inmates, because it's not an Alcatraz file that I went to. It was Alcatraz inmates. So it's all their records from over the years, because there are approximately 1,500 inmates that were at Alcatraz, during its time it was open. And so they have a lot of the other inmates' records as well. It was just trying to narrow it down to theirs and downloading, these massive files to get all the documents. So I'm still going to keep looking to see if I can find Frank Morris's, because I have to believe it's there somewhere, because he was such an important person. Was
Mickey's in there? Was Whitey's there? Whitey Bulger's?
Whitey's was there. I did find Whitey's. I sent that to you. It's John's, Clarence's, and Whitey's. So you have Whitey's. Mickey, I didn't see anything. I mean, there might be like an odd thing here and there, like a photograph or a document, one single document, but that's really it. Some are more files bigger than other. But I have to believe, and like I said, it was from the National Archives, and they got these records from the Bureau of Prisons. So they scanned and copied them and sent them to the National Archives so that you can look them up online and find them for yourself. So it would be hard to see how many more records there would be for John and Clarence. Maybe there were earlier records from their days in Florida. There might be those, because there really weren't a lot of those. It was more once they kind of hit the federal level, that's when the record keeping started to happen in great detail. So those would have to be more on the local level, I think, to find the earlier times they were incarcerated, when they were in Florida, doing the smaller petty crimes. But at the time, they were just small timers. It was no big deal. Yeah. They would be sent to a place for a few months and they get released, or they'd be, sent for 2 years, and on good behavior, they'd be out 9 months, kind of thing. So those are going to be more local, I think. But the federal stuff, I think, at least for John and Clarence, I don't know where else they would possibly be, because they're pretty detailed.
Yeah, they are detailed. I mean, these questionnaires are pretty crazy. Yeah, are you crippled, deformed, or physically handicapped in any way? Oh, here's another one. Did you ever have clap or gonorrhea?
I think they said no to that one.
Exactly. No, yeah, the only ones they said yes to was he had a tonsillectomy and he was shot. So there you go. No broken bones, no clap. It's interesting. Haven't heard that term in a while.
So Ken, we all did a bunch of FOIA requests for Mickey Cohen stuff. What happened with yours?
Mine was turned down again. They cited national security. Why? I don't know. I think I did mention it to Stewart, and he said he's tried multiple times and he gets the exact same response back from him.
Yeah, that's interesting. What could Mickey Cohen have anything to do with national security? That's
a good question. There's so many unanswered questions in this file, in this case, surrounding Mickey Cohen, Whitey Bulger, and the Anglin brothers.
Yeah.
Yes, it's a very deep rabbit hole. We could go on and on about it.
I mean, the only I can think of and come up with is the fact that, Mickey worked with or for Myers Lansky. And we've actually struck up a relationship with his grandson, Myers Lansky II, and I know Myers was involved in a lot of stuff, like just internationally. I mean, he helped build Cuba, and if anybody's a fan of The Godfather, Godfather 2, the Hyman Roth character is based upon Meyer Lansky. When they were cutting up the cake in Cuba, and the crazy scene with when Michael finds out Fredo betrayed him and he kisses him, telling him. So it's like that was really interesting to see that parallel. And we spent some time with Myers and really kind of asked him kind of specific questions about his grandfather. And he said, he was involved in a lot of stuff, politics and stuff. I mean, he was a high level gangster. He didn't die until 1983. So he was around he was in his 80s. For someone to be that kind of high level and live that long, he had his hands in a lot of stuff. So maybe maybe they were involved in stuff.
Very well could be.
But that mob connection there and related to Alcatraz is definitely interesting and something that we explore in the series. So, and we're very excited for it to come out and for everybody to see it.
It's gonna be a really, really good show.
Yeah.
Just one of the other things I wanted to bring up with the some of the documents that I sent you. One of them was written in '58 when Clarence was at Leavenworth. And one of the things you had to do, and this was in the federal prison system, was you had to get permission to write to people and to people to write you in the prison. You had to submit a list to whoever was responsible for that, and they would vet these people, check them, make sure there weren't any issues with communication.
They still do that.
Yeah, of course. You don't want to have something happen because they're communicating, and it's a big problem for the prison. Mm-hmm. But one of them was Clarence getting permission for Ruth to be on his mailing list, which is interesting because Ruth is Helen's sister. Helen was the one that John and Helen wanted to marry each other. Ruth was the sister, and Clarence had seemingly casually dated her. It didn't seem to be too serious, but the fact that in '58 he wanted to have communication with her, we can't go into the details, but that will play out later in the story. That's very important. Mm-hmm. That already he was wanting the communication to be, while he was in prison. And I don't know if he ever got permission or not, but at least he wanted to have that contact with her that I think will be important later on.
Yeah. Lots of stuff to reveal.
So much stuff. It's exciting though.
Stay tuned.
Stay tuned is right. Anything else in these documents that you think is interesting, Mike?
So many things.
I know.
There's a letter that John wrote about Helen, and like I said, he refers to her as his common law wife. That he obviously, even while in prison, was still had very strong feelings, and I'm just looking at the letter. He says, I couldn't, that she doesn't have the money to visit him. Her son, John, is 5 years old and he got sick a few weeks ago. And the doctor said he might not live much longer. And it's taking everything she makes to take care of him, plus 2 of her boys in school. She works 5 days and 6 days a week. If you can help me out on the photo, I don't know what the photo is, I'd never forget it. So, Helen at the time had the son, John, and we're not sure whose son it is. I mean,
when did she have it after he was when he was, can they backdate?
I think it was before he went to prison.
Right. Cause she says he's 5 years old in '58. So he was born in '53.
Mm-hmm.
Who's the father? We're not sure. I know he's still alive, and Ken, you've talked to him about trying to get his DNA, and he won't do it.
No.
Where's he?
He also had 2 other children at the time, which I didn't know about. I knew about John Jr., but I didn't know about the other children. So there's 3 kids that she had at the time.
So were they younger or older?
I believe they're younger than him, because I think John was the first.
Mm-hmm. Interesting that she named him John, and she was still married to someone else at the time.
Yeah, she was.
Huh.
Named him John.
But there is another letter that she wrote, and she says that she's divorced from her husband. So later on, because, and most likely she did it for John Anglin, that she wanted to divorce her husband. And it wasn't a happy marriage. It was sort of her father kind of forced her to marry him just to get John out of her system and kind of get on with a proper life, not with some guy on the wrong side of the tracks that's no good.
It's gonna rob a bank.
You know, he's a criminal. Didn't work out so well because she just loved John and just was willing to commit herself to him. And I think she was also planning to move up to where the prison was just to be close to him, but that never happened because, as John said in his letter, she was just trying to keep the family surviving. You know, she's working 5-6 days a week, just trying to roof over their head and food on the table. So she was really struggling financially to try to keep the family going, and at the same time holding out for John and trying to plead with them to get him out of prison so he can be there to kind of help support her as well. And they were going to, you know, if that happened, they were going to get married. That was the plan. It's
so funny because I had when my mom later on in life told me, you know, as you know, my father passed in 2011, but she was telling me stories about when they got married, and my dad was used to get in trouble. It was kind of like, he wasn't, you know, he would steal stuff and stuff like that. And he grew up in New York and Queens and hung out with a bunch of wannabe wise guys, teenagers. And apparently he had done a couple break-ins and literally right before they were supposed to get married, I guess he got caught breaking into a furniture store. And so he had to go to court like a month before he was set to get married to my mother. And it wasn't sure whether or not he was going to have to do time for it. So the judge basically looked at my mom and said, you know, it was because of what my mom said that kept him out of prison or out of jail at the point.
And that's what you've always said, Ken, that there was a love story at the core of this whole Alcatraz story, you know, and people don't know that. They don't know this whole Helen and John story until you started really diving into this. And now that you found these other letters, Mike, I mean, it just gets deeper.
Mm-hmm. She was definitely in love with him, and he was in love with her.
Oh, you can see it. I mean, just the way she's kind of pleading for him. Mr. Hitchcock. Was that what his name? Or Hitchcock? Is that what it is? Hitchcock? I guess he was like the Bureau of Prisons or guy. It's just, you can tell just the way she's phrasing everything. She was definitely was in love with John.
Yes.
You know? Interesting stuff, guys.
Always
it's a deep well. It's a deep well, and I'm sorry we're being so cryptic with some of this information, but we got to hold stuff back, and this is part of the big tease until this happens, until they air this documentary series. But stay tuned.
But we will be at CrimeCon this year to discuss Alcatraz with our wonderful panel of experts. So if you're going to CrimeCon, let us know.
Come see us.